This is 6035 Media. Engage.
So your challenge to me and our challenge to unfortunately, our friend who was not with us.
Not rest in peace. He's just incredibly busy.
He's not resting at all.
He's not resting peacefully at all.
No, actually, yeah, he's doing quite the opposite. Kelly Karnetsky, the guy who's seen too much, probably been too much, couldn't make it in today. But you challenged me to think of favorite memes and most hated memes.
Your favorite and your least favorite, most hated meme.
Mm-hmm.
There's so many of them out there.
And the challenge was there's so many good ones. Like so many of them are now embedded into the mental fabric of what I think the internet is.
Well, and you can't even see a movie or watch a TV show with, on occasion, somebody just kind of slyly mentioning it.
Yeah.
Like the way they phrase
Right.
something or the way they behave or something like that.
Yeah. Like when someone mentions Rickroll out loud.
Oh, yeah.
Like as a verb, like I just rickrolled you, like when Tracy rickrolled me, and that was amazing. You were there.
I don't think I was
Or
there.
was she was like, scan this QR code.
Oh, I was there.
Yes, you were. Exactly. Yes.
Do you remember when Rick Astley was in the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade?
Because that was the moment I was like, the internet has become real.
And even my mom noticed it. And I was like, wow.
Noticed it in that context?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. She'd kind of heard the mulling of what Rick Rolling was, and then she saw it on the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade. And this is a woman in her late 40s, early 50s. Mm-hmm. And me being morbidly embarrassed.
Morbidly embarrassed.
Mortified is the real word I was looking for. I got there eventually. Yeah, that's when I knew that meme was dead. Because my mom knew.
Because, but I wonder, though, was it dead or did it have a new life? Because...
You know what?
We're not, in the grand scheme of things, like compared to the creation of the sun, we're not that different in age. But I remember when that song was getting radio time.
Oh my gosh.
When it was actually getting radio. Like, I remember enjoying it, and his other single, what the heck was it? Cry for Help. Mm-hmm. I remember when those were, showing up on the adult soft favorite contemporary radio stations, and then 15 years later, here's it showing up It's back, the video, which no one, I mean, Vivo and them were putting up all the music videos and stuff like that at that time, but I don't think anyone expected that video. And for Rick Astley to be like, I'm going to be the target of this 4chanery. And fast forward to 2022, I guess, with Kate Bush sure.
rolling up that hill, who's the Greek god that rolls the stone up the hill? Sisyphus.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Was he a god or was he more just a dude in hell? Hades. Sorry.
Not a question for me, unfortunately.
Have we played Hades? We could be playing more Hades.
Oh, I will be playing more Hades. I am in love with Hades.
Especially now that there's a sequel.
There is a sequel coming out. Yeah.
So speaking of best memes, is that the best one?
Oh man, I think maybe you got it. The best meme of all time is maybe Rick Astley.
Yeah.
It's family friendly. It's good for all ages.
It's a hit. It's a bop.
It's a bop.
It's a bop. It slaps. It goes. You know all the words.
And anybody under the age of 25 just turned off the podcast because you said it slaps.
I have to show my cred somehow. My goodness.
But it is a bop. You're not wrong.
It is an absolute
somebody comes
bop.
up and sings karaoke of Rick Astley, you bet everyone's going to be dancing.
I know, exactly. And the director of the video was Simon, I can't remember, but I believe he went on to direct like Con Air.
Oh.
And like those films, that was like one of his first gigs because so many directors of the 90s came out of music videos.
Well, this comes full circle because I want to call Top Gun Con Air all the time. all the
That
time.
is an interesting little tweak there.
I don't know. There's a glitch in my brain that has always existed that I want to call each one the other name.
Top Gun is Con Air.
In my brain.
Okay.
Don't know what happened there.
Con Air. And Tom Cruise is Con Air.
Yeah.
Yeah, we really got to get these prisoners out. Just
I think it's because they're both 2 words, 3 letters, and so I just mix them up. Or maybe it's Con Gun.
Yeah, right.
Top Air.
Right. I was mentally trying to contort Toy Stow in there. It's like, that's dumb. Why did I do that? So, all right, if that's in the running for best meme, what's the worst meme? And my pitch to you was the galaxy of advice animals. Now, back in the day, because I've been on the internet for a very long time, I remember there was a pre-meme, but before there were memes, really. There was stuff like advice animals, but then like Facebook comes, late aughts, and there are just entire farms of advice animals with just the slightly different backgrounds, different colors, different props in front, and just top text, lower text, impact. And they've got meme generators.
Would you believe I feel like I can top that?
Okay. All right. Let's hear it.
Speaking of Facebook and memes that have grown on Facebook, any sort of minion meme,
Okay.
I think tops the worst of the memes. Now, we're not counting memes that are, problematic.
Right.
Put those to the side. No,
Right.
the memes that really fill you with some sort of discontent.
Yeah,
It's a minion meme.
for minions. And it's interesting because those, I think of Minions, but then I also think immediately to SpongeBob, which is a glue of the internet at this point. I wrote an article about this when I had when Hot Takes and Stream Breaks was in a one-dimensional format of text. I wrote an article about the meminess of SpongeBob, and it's everywhere. You can use SpongeBob for everything.
Oh, yeah.
Anything at all times, because that show is so random and strange, and a lot of times has no point whatsoever.
No. And unfortunately, I've recently seen a new-ish episode of SpongeBob.
Yeah.
Happened to be flipping channels. I was in the gym looking for some kid-friendly channels because my kiddo had to be with me. He's almost 4. And one of the few channels available was playing SpongeBob, so I put on SpongeBob because
HD SpongeBob.
I was curious.
Yeah. Mom's got to know.
I was going to say it's animated now. It's always been animated. It's computer animated now. It's 3D Pixar type.
Like 3D.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Not sure how I feel about it. Somehow, it's less gross looking, if that makes any sense, but more disconcerting.
I think of like Ren and Stimpy gross.
Yeah.
Okay, because SpongeBob could use those like extreme close-ups or something of like weird faces or dried out sponges or whatever.
Exactly.
Okay.
It has gone as far away from the genre of gross animation as possible, which is very weird with its tone of humor.
Because it's kind of
gross humor.
Yeah.
It's
not
as gross as Ren and Stimpy.
No.
That's the extreme.
That was so awful. We couldn't even. There were episodes my parents watched and like, you can't watch this episode. And then the episodes you could watch, it's like, oh no, this is wrong. Yeah.
SpongeBob, the glue that brings us all together.
Is it better than Latter-day Simpsons? Because it's been a couple of years now, but I will pop in a random episode of The Simpsons and.
Simpsons still holds my curiosity for sure.
Yeah, like how is it still alive?
If I'm flipping channels and it's on, I need to know.
Yeah, like how
what's going on here now?
Twisted and awful is this now?
Is it good? Is it bad? Sometimes it's a toss of a coin.
It is the first zombie show. All right, I'm gonna leave it with that.
We're not talking zombies today.
We're not talking next time. Let's get to the show. Hello and welcome to Hot Takes and String Breaks, the bi-weekly pop culture podcast brought to you by 6035 Media. I'm your host, reporter Nick Raven, and joining me in the studio is account executive Viktoria Costantino. How are you doing today?
I am excellent.
Good.
It is foggy and dreary out today, and I love that because I just want to be all cozy with some tea and a blanket and watching some movies.
And that's why you're doing that exactly right now.
That's why I'm in a very cozy sweater right now.
Okay.
Very cozy sweater.
All you need is the tea.
It's a portable blanket when you wear a cozy sweater.
If it's crocheted, that means it was made with love. That's great. Yeah, Kelly, like I said, Kelly couldn't make it in. We're going to have Greta in. We might have Greta in next time. We're going to catch up on Last of Us, but for this episode, I keep saying week, but we don't do these every week. This episode, we're going to talk about the Oscars. But before we do that, we have the news.
Woo! I love the news.
Do you love the news?
I love the news.
We make news here.
Yes.
It allows us to eat. It's pretty great.
Very important.
All right. I'm going to kick this off with the Washington Post. This happened in the last 2 weeks, and I'm like, wow, has it really been? The bewildering descent of Scott Adams and Dilbert. On his February 22nd episode of Real Coffee with Scott Adams, the creator of the comic strip Dilbert decided to riff on a much-criticized Rasmussen poll and promote a type of segregation. He declared that black Americans are part of a hate group and urged white people to get the hell away from black people. By the following weekend, his syndicate and publishers were getting far away from him, severing business ties and halting future projects. So were hundreds of newspapers, including The Post, that dropped Dilbert from their pages. What did you think when you saw that?
So this is the most information I've gotten about this story because, again, circling back, all I've seen is the memes about it. So all I knew is Mr. Dilbert, author, it did a bad.
Pre-Office Space.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Wow, that is so much more intense than I could have even fathomed.
Yeah, and he's... I think he's always leaned conservative and stuff like that, but now that he's kind of leaning into that because in the polls it was I can't recall the exact specifics of it here, which is a hot takes standard, of course, but it was basically that, you know, because white people intimidated black people, they didn't feel like they belonged with them, and as it says here, the poll was not constructed very well, something like that. But the fact that, you know, Scott Adams would then let the mask slip off entirely and go down that route was pretty disgusting. As
such a cultural figure, too.
Yeah. Controversial, especially.
I find it interesting that this is actually coming out around Dr. Seuss time.
I actually have the next story that I'll have you read about Roald Dahl.
Oh, so we're all about cartoons and children for the news?
Right.
That's kind of sad.
Right. And God, it's... we can actually dive into this because there was a bunch of like 40s cartoons and stuff like that portrayed black women and stuff like that as maids and stuff like that. And they didn't have any content warnings like that when we were kids. But then years and decades later, they would have like Whoopi Goldberg come and say, hey, this is the way things were. We didn't alter anything, but keep that in mind as we get into that. Before we move on, though, but like Scott Adams, of all people, and... You know, think what you will of Dilbert. I have certainly not thought of Dilbert in a very long time.
He is a household name, but you do not think about him on a daily.
No, definitely not. Or the pointy-haired boss or any of those, or his dog with the glasses.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah. It seems like it would be perfect for a Peanuts star. I believe there was a TV show back in the day of Dilbert. There must have been. There has to have been.
This is all just fascinating timing, because didn't about 2 weeks ago the author of Calvin and Hobbes just released like a horror book or something along those lines?
New. Yeah.
So it almost feels purposeful. Of course, that's just entire speculation. But
I think it's Mercury in retrograde.
Yes, I think Mercury is definitely doing something with these comic artists for sure.
Especially from the early 90s, like our growing up time.
Right.
You know, like, because you mentioned him, and then I actually watched Phil Edwards, YouTuber. He also works at Vox. He just did a story about pissing Calvin.
Oh my gosh!
He did a story a decade ago for Vox about where that came from, and how the author, name I can't remember, who's got Calvin and Hobbes' artist, but he would not allow his syndicate to merchandise Calvin and Hobbes to then be able to clear out all these crappy counterfeit Calvin pissing. Just so that, and it was he got really kind of philosophical about it. But Scott Adams, man, what the hell? What are you doing? But so let's segue into our next thingy here. I'll get you to number 2.
Alrighty. From the AP. Penguin to publish classic Roald Dahl books after backlash. Publisher Penguin Random House announced Friday it will publish quote-unquote classic. Oh, man. Unexpurgated? Wow.
There's some words.
Unexpurgated versions of Roald Dahl's children's novels after it received criticism for cuts and rewrites that were intended to make the book suitable for modern readers. Along with the new editions, the company said 17 of Dahl's books would be published in their original form later this year as the Roald Dahl Classic Collection, so readers will be free to choose which version of Dahl's stories they prefer. The move comes after criticism of scores of changes made to Charlie and the Chocolate Factory and other much-loved classics for recent editions published under the company's Puffin Children's label, in which passages relating to weight, mental health, gender, and race were altered.
So what do you think about that, especially as a parent who's having to... art's changing.
As the resident parent.
Yes, exactly.
As a resident parent, I will talk about my fifth grade self that read Charlie and the Chocolate Factory and recognized that all of that stuff was wrong and bad. So, I mean, I can't have been the only fifth grader that figured that was
Not
bad
good.
and wrong. So maybe it's an opportunity to have discussions about it. But then again, we get into who's making the discussions. Are the conversations good and fruitful? All of these other things. So it's complicated, right? So, I mean, I mentioned the Dr. Seuss issue. And I had recently bought some, beginner Dr. Seuss books for my son last week because I knew that this week he'd be talking about it at school. So I wanted to make sure he had some in the house. And, we've had these discussions recently, so I was flipping through the pages, and only once did I see something that was maybe a little bit questionable. And it's tough, right? Do you trust yourself as a parent to have these conversations with your kid? I know I trust myself to have those conversations. Not every parent is confident enough to do that.
Sure.
And I know that it's difficult. And I know you're afraid that every little thing that you say, isn't going to resonate correctly. But these are kids in a society. They're having conversations. It is your job as the parent to guide them in the direction. I also think it's the teacher's job in their classroom to point them in the right direction. This is everybody's responsibility, not just one person's. Now, whether or not there should be censored copies or changed copies of these stories probably should have been done a long time ago, but coulda, woulda, shoulda.
Right.
Hindsight's 2020.
Should have never gotten in, is what you're saying.
It should have never gotten in, but being what they are, I don't know. I think there's a larger conversation to be had as far as what context are you presenting them in. Clearly, at least my fifth grade self could figure out what was right and wrong, but that doesn't mean that every fifth grader can. Right,
and there are gradients of that, of course, because,
Sure.
I mean, stuff even that we find acceptable today, like 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years from now,
Oh, yeah.
it's going to be like, whoa. And
Absolutely.
at that point, do you become, because that is an argument. It's like, well, we're changing this stuff now. What happens when they come and try and change what we're talking about? Is the stuff we're saying now unacceptable? Well, it's to some extent.
That has happened for every medium over every generation.
Yeah.
Whether the lyrics of a song has changed, that's part of a cultural song. We still sing things like Ring Around the Rosie that most of us know is about the Black Plague. Is that something we should still be singing in schools? It can arise in so many different contexts, and it's the job of adults to make sure that when that does happen, we're taking care of it.
Yeah, and I remember particularly with like Willy Wonka, because I didn't read Willy Wonka, the first one. I read The Glass Elevator, which is a bizarre book that still haunts me to this day. That was in 3rd grade, and it didn't make any sense because it didn't really line up with what was going on in the movie. Go figure. But I know that they had like changed artwork depicting, who the Oompa Loompas were, because originally they were like African kids. And
oh
stuff.
yeah,
like,
it's very explicit almost.
Yes, and they'd done that some time ago, as I understood it. And then even growing up, like we had the golden books. And we had the ones with the Tar Baby in it, and it's like, this seems weird.
Right.
This, like kindergarten level or 4 or 5, it's like, this doesn't seem quite right, but I don't know why.
And when you're a kid, you don't know how to explain it. But I think the knowledge of knowing, being able to recognize that something is wrong is already a step in the right direction.
Right.
So I think we don't give kids enough credit either.
Right.
We tend to think, they're just kids. Kids are so much smarter. They've got less of a filter than we do. When they see, my kid, I can never do a rolling stop at a stop sign.
Oh, you can't.
Because
no California stops.
Absolutely not. Because they've got no filter, and they know that what you're doing is wrong, and they will tell you. And I think we don't give them credit in things that are really, really valuable.
Yeah.
So I don't know, more conversations with your kids. Talk to your kids.
Yeah, and also it goes the other way too, where the things that kids can't pick up on and don't know, those things then get embedded, and sometimes those can be the wrong things.
Yes.
Depending on the culture that you're in and that.
Oh, yeah.
And I know that personally. Absolutely, yeah. A lot of bad ideas in there, and it's like I had to work my way out of that. And I know a lot of people have or haven't. Or they haven't,
I have to tell a little story on the podcast. My son is almost 4.
Yes.
He goes to daycare, preschool. They were discussing Martin Luther King Jr. Fantastic. Love it. And then he gets in the car after I pick him up. Mama, you and I are both white together. We are so white. Oh, you're white just like me. And I thought to myself, oh, honey, you're right. But
Correct.
maybe we need to figure out a nicer way to say that.
Yeah, maybe we can filter that.
Filter that. So yeah, it can go both ways. Imagine if he would say something like that as like a 15-year-old kid. Now that would be a big problem.
Yeah, right. Exactly. That's when you definitely need, a little filter.
A little bit of coaching.
Some interesting friends, And there's an entire discussion to be had about separating art from the artists.
Oh, yeah. Very relevant these days.
Exactly. And so it makes sense to publish them as but like we were talking about, just providing context for why that is rather than just outright censoring it.
Yeah.
Makes sense to me.
And at the same time, there's a lot of amazing new books for kids coming out.
Yeah, you don't have to go back to...
You don't have to be exclusively, teaching Roald Dahl.
Yeah.
Roald Dahl in association with other books. Just as new publications come out, you can grow. There's no reason why not.
Right. I mean, SpongeBob is glue of the internet.
SpongeBob is glue of the internet.
And maybe, those World War II era wartime cartoons. Maybe don't stand up like that. Number 3. Why did I do number 1? It didn't smart. Usually it's smart about these lists and that. CNN says, among so many other parties that I read up on this, $30 million of Funko Pop toys will be thrown in the trash. Funko said in its fourth quarter earnings report that a combination of waning demand for the toys and a surplus of inventory is creating financial trouble for the company. Last year, they had to rent excess warehouse just to hold the buildup of Funko figures, which ranged from Baby Yoda, Grogu, for us, lorists, I guess, to Eddie Van Halen. Funko was holding on to about $246.4 million worth of dolls at the end of 2022. That's 48% more than they had on hand just 1 year before. So what I have to say about that is, it's great that people, that's mine. That people enjoy them. I get their collectability. Also, the best place for them is usually the trash.
Do you have any Funko Pops?
I think, oh God, I don't know if I have any now, but I have had them.
Okay.
Like a couple.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have two.
Uh-huh.
And they have been sitting in a drawer for about a year. Not in the box. I'm not one of those folks.
The NRFB, yeah.
And I did spend normal money on both of them.
Yes.
Normal money. They weren't, from a garage sale, and they weren't high priced. They're 15-ish bucks.
Yeah.
For things I really love. I do not understand the fascination with Funko Pops. I don't understand the love behind them. I don't understand how it became a collectibles thing, besides that there's just a lot.
Yeah. I think they connected with the right people at the right time. Because it totally came out of that, I call the quote-unquote golden era of, the Comic-Con culture, the Chris Hardwick, Nathan Fillion,
yes.
Ernest Cline.
Right.
Right as Comic-Cons are the Nerdists. Mm-hmm. And then Funko Pops. They're all part of this galaxy of commodified nerdery that just kind of live and grew together. Will Wheaton.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Know exactly what you're saying.
Yeah, and it just kind of all came together at once, and every Comic-Con you go to, there is at least one booth that is just 3 walls of Funko Pops. Now, so here's my answer to why you would want to buy these. Is you find the one for you.
Yes.
They do so many of them and if you don't know what they are, you know what they are. They come in the white box. They've got the window on 2 sides. They are all uniform in shape and size, 80% of the way, and then they have these big beady, lifeless eyes with no mouth. And they're just there. Yeah. They're like paper dolls, but made out of plastic. So, all the environmental stuff that goes along with that. But they make them in so many properties now that no matter what your thing is, there's a Funko Pop or 5 in a series that you have to collect. Or they come in a big freaking version, they're Fallout
There's
ones.
giant
There are
Funko
giant,
Pops.
yes, there are giant ones, and then there's smaller ones, but they're all the same idea.
Yes,
is commodified fandom. Yes,
right. And I mean, we've been doing this for a while, right?
Yeah,
we've been doing this with Beanie Babies.
Yes,
there's always something. There's always something for a collector out there,
right?
To me, I just think these ones in particular. These ones are kind of boring. But as far as a collectible, I think there's so many cool things to collect. I don't know. I just don't understand the fascination with those in particular.
They're not even that really good at collectibles, really. They're I don't...
But see, would we be talking about this if we weren't, as we're not in the golden age of cons? When we were in the golden age of cons, we would probably be saying, oh, did you know they have the Frasier Funko Pop? So I got to get me a Frasier Funko Pop.
Well, I'm going to tell you no, but... But I know people who would,
right?
Or they would be, but it never became like a baseball card thing where it's you have to collect an entire set, you have to this and that. It was always just the one-off thing.
One of my 2 Funko Pops. Is Sailor Saturn from Sailor Moon.
Okay.
Who is my favorite Sailor Scout.
Sure.
By the way, it's like having a favorite Disney princess, but nerdier.
Even if those are also 80 to 90% the same.
Exactly.
All the sailor girls
But I will never get rid of her because she's always hard to find in merchandise. So I understand it as part of a whole saying, okay, I'm going to collect Sailor Saturn things.
Yeah.
But I don't understand the I'm going to collect Funko Pops thing.
I think you bring up a really good point there. I don't think it's and I think also that's why it has gained this kind of popularity is you don't consider the Funko Pops a destination. It's kind of a journey thing. So you get the book, you get the comic book, you get the T-shirt, you watch the movie, and you get the Funko Pop. Mm-hmm. It's just ubiquitous. It is a part of something else. It is not the salad or the plate. It is the fork.
Right.
That's what that is.
Yeah.
That's what Funko Pops are.
Well, and fascinating to see how they embody your crazy character, like the alien from the Aliens movie. What are they going to do with a xenomorph? How are they going to put it in this form? Which I get the appeal of that. That makes sense.
And it's always worse than you imagine.
It's always worse.
Well, more trash going in the trash. We should really do if they made them out of wood or something like some post-corn product. Like maybe that wouldn't be so bad, but they are plastic.
I bet they
AF.
have all of the members of Korn in Funko Pops.
I bet they do.
I bet they do.
Before we get into the news, not the news, but the main event, I have to... Okay, Siri, who wrote Calvin and Hobbes? Bill Watterson.
Yes.
There we go.
My husband is listening to this podcast and screaming right now.
Because
it's his favorite.
It's my favorite because my wife's in it. Thank you for your support, Gabe. Absolutely. Yeah, freaking Funko Pops, but they will outlive us.
They will. Absolutely.
And someday, okay, here's the thing. When they come to us and say, "Yo, we're making hot takes and streaming breaks Funko Pops. Do you want to see our sketches?" And we'll be like, Yes,
absolutely.
100%.
Make me into a Funko Pop, please.
Yes, do it. Make me into a lifeless void from which I cannot escape. All right, let's get into the main event. We're going to talk about the Oscars. How's that sound?
Yeah.
All right, so before the next episode, we've got this little celebration, this shindig of movies.
This is a little event, a little thing.
The Oscars.
The Oscars.
Scars.
Oh, apostrophe. The Oscars, because it's in March, right?
Yeah, St. Patty's Day celebration. I would drink a dark ale that was an Oscars.
This sounds excellent.
I know. Wow. That's incredible. All right. So they're putting on a show, but we're going to talk about the best pictures because you've seen them all. Congrats.
I've seen them all.
Congrats. Absolutely.
Thank you.
I've seen 6. I'd wanted to do more, but some of them are just inaccessible still. They're still in theater. Women Talking still in theaters. Mm-hmm. Everything Everywhere All at Once is still it's on some streaming services, but all the ones I don't have. And then they wanted like $20 on Amazon for it still. Triangle of Sadness I got really close on. But otherwise I got the other one. So let's run down these. And if there are any surprises from the rest of the field that you have some ideas on, we can get to those as well. But let's start with All Quiet on the Western Front. This is on Netflix. And it's based on the book I don't know if it's based on the movie, the original movie.
Based on the book, based on the movie. At this point, it's been at least a good 50 to 70 years, depending on your original. Because I think the first one was in the 40s, and then the other one was in the 70s, I believe.
The 40s was 80 years ago.
Oh, my God. I don't want to think about that.
I mean, we weren't alive,
but still.
My parents weren't even alive.
Yeah.
So what'd you think?
Okay, so my hot take... is that I think this is one of the ties for what will probably win.
Okay.
And I think it will probably win because it's a war movie. Mm-hmm. My personal hot take is this is pretty low on my list of favorites.
Okay.
So, excuse me. Little disclaimer, I'm not a huge war movie fan.
I've noticed that.
It's not my thing.
More Star Peace than Star Wars.
Yeah, you're getting it. A little more Phantom, a little less Menace.
Exactly. Misa loving it.
So, my hot take for All Quiet. We had a World War I movie just a couple years ago. It was 1917. Mm-hmm. It had a fun little shtick where it was what looks like a one-take film. Mm-hmm. It's really well paced. It's really well acted. Very sticky.
Very sticky.
But for me, that's what sold it. I thought it was brilliant because of that. Was it my favorite? God, no. I don't like war movies.
Do you like Sam Mendes films?
No. I'm literally met on that.
Yeah. Because I saw Empire of Light.
I haven't seen it. So
Anyway.
All Quiet is a beautifully made movie with excellent actors. Hard to tell how good the script is, the adapted screenplay, because it's entirely in German. So I can't really speak to that.
It's a lot of horrifying, brutal language.
A lot of brutal language, which is fine. It's World War I. I mean, the tone in my voice should tell you how I'm feeling about this. We've seen World War I. I'm sitting there watching the movie of them in the trench. Scenes of them in the trenches is like a good half the movie because that's what happened.
Right.
And I lean over to my husband and I say, doesn't this look exactly like 1917, like the set? And he goes, well, that's because that's how it looked in real life, Victoria. I go, well, of course.
Yeah, naturally.
So is it a good set or is it an easy to make set?
Yeah.
So I've got that little asterisk there. Okay, that kind of stuck in my head. The other thing that was very strange about this movie that I don't feel like is getting a lot of conversation. It has an almost Jaws-like music sting.
Okay.
That goes, it's something like na na na, and it happens throughout the entire movie. It's electronic, and so that kind of fits with German because German culture likes a lot of electronic music.
Yeah.
But it doesn't fit this movie. And they throw in that sting throughout the entire thing, whether it's something as charming as stealing some eggs from a farmer or somebody dying an incredibly gruesome death in a trench. And it was very confusing. Now, it'd be one thing if the entire score was electronic. It's not. So it was extremely distracting for me. What's interesting is that I believe it was also nominated for Best Score.
Oh, yeah.
And so I'm fascinated to find out. Yes, it is. It is.
Yes, you got it.
Best Original Score. I'm fascinated. Is this an American issue? Because this was a German-made film in German by Germans, technically for Germans. Is it because I'm American? Is it? Am I not getting something, or is it actually that distracting?
I think it's because you're an ally, and 1917 was the French side, or it was the British. It was the British.
It was the British side.
It was the British side as they were fighting the Germans. So I think that's. I think that's really it.
Well, and that's a legitimate point because we all know what happens about 30 to 40 years later. And when it's coming from a German perspective, I kind of have to sit and wonder, is this movie going to at least metaphorically address what we all know in the audience is coming? Is the whole movie, it's a war movie, so it is a metaphor that war is bad.
Yeah.
That war does terrible things to innocent people. The politicians are usually the people that, are really holding the power as opposed to these, teenage boys that are out in the trenches.
Because it starts off with the classroom, right?
It does have some, pre-war, pre-enlistment scenes. They're very short at the very beginning to kind of give you that backstory. Again, I think this is a translation issue. I had such a hard time until the very end of the movie differentiating between all of these German boys. I mean, they were teens.
Yeah.
That all look pretty similar. And maybe if this had been in English, maybe I wouldn't feel that way. But I had such a hard time keeping track of what was going on because I couldn't tell who was who.
Like in the mud.
They're all covered in mud. They're all wearing the same uniform. As far as I can tell, I don't speak German. They all sound kind of the same. If I did speak German, I definitely wouldn't feel that way. But it was a hard watch for me. Okay. That said, it's actually, it's a quality movie. It is an Oscar contender. I wouldn't necessarily recommend it.
Not your best film.
No.
We've already talked a lot about Avatar: The Way of Water, Avatar 2, the Smurf movie, Avatar 2 Returns. And that's not going to win. It's not.
I'm going to really trust that it's not going to win.
Yeah. James Cameron will not be king of the world after this one.
I don't need to shred Avatar apart again for the second time, so I'll just say that it was not my favorite movie.
And that's true. And we have a whole episode dedicated. You can go and listen and watch all that fun stuff. This one we do get to talk about the Banshees of Inisherin.
Yes.
Inisherin.
The Banshees of Inisherin.
Yeah.
And don't worry about if you're mispronouncing Inisherin, because it is a fictional place, and they address that in the film.
Yeah, like Alderaan.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter how you say it. So I have seen this. This is, I'll just drop it. This is my favorite of the ones here. And I know you had... Yeah,
this is my number one.
This is not my typical thing, like the Irish countryside thing, the whole the accent, the 1923 setting. But it is such a quaint story. We don't need to spoil it, but but a friendship ends.
Yeah. And
one doesn't like that, and the other one's setting boundaries, and those boundaries are insane. And It's beautiful. It is folklore.
It is.
It is really folklore.
And it's not.
Yeah.
So the thing I found fascinating about Banshees, and I knew this before going in, people that don't know this going in, I feel like have a different take on it, that it's about Scotland and Ireland. And it's folklore, but it's a very literal and direct metaphor. Or not Scotland and Ireland.
Britain and Ireland?
Britain and Ireland.
Yeah.
And for me, this historical metaphor is so, you talk about the phrase, cut off your nose to spite your face.
Yeah.
That is made extremely literal in this movie. And I think the way that is portrayed is just really, I almost wish that All Quiet had been a really strong metaphor like Banshees would have.
Yeah.
Because that was such a fascinating way to really humanize a civil war that is wildly complicated, but to put it into, being represented by these characters, I thought was beautiful and really simplified what the issue was, and that it's all a very human issue. Mm-hmm. And the acting is phenomenal.
Incredible.
Stunning.
Yeah, I mispronounced his name, but Mr. Keegan?
Barry Keegan.
Barry Keegan, yeah, as Dominic.
Yes.
The annoying little crap that he is. Just like, wow. And
yes.
the day by day, the night by night, Siobhan, the sister, incredible job portraying this, like, she's putting up with it. She is
until
handling
she doesn't.
Until she doesn't. Yeah, exactly. And then Brendan Gleeson is incredible as Colin.
Oh, absolutely.
And the cinematography is beautiful. The opening shots, which are now, everything is just drones now. You don't need helicopters for it, but they're just beautiful shot. I didn't realize that there are places where they still have like the knee-high walls around these properties and stuff, because it's shot in a real place. It's just set in a fictional one.
It really feels like you just teleported into 1920s Ireland.
Yeah.
Whatever you've got in your brain with these rolling green hills and the cold lakes and oceans, it's exactly what you get.
Yeah.
And you can feel it. There's a scene where Barry Keegan's character walks up to a lake and he's just pointing at it generally and making a very funny statement. It's my favorite part of the movie.
It is a funny movie. It is a funny movie.
It is a funny movie.
Yeah.
but it's also dark and it's sad and disheartening and it is exactly hilarious in the exact same context. And it's mind-blowing that they were able to make that happen.
And it's because it's not relying on gags or stuff like that.
No.
Yeah. All right, we're going to move on. Elvis. This movie is 2 hours and like 46 minutes. It could have been an hour and 46 minutes.
You saw Elvis.
I saw Elvis.
Are you a Baz Luhrmann fan?
Romeo
plus Juliet, Moulin
Rouge, The Great Gatsby.
The Great Gatsby, Australia.
I have a lot of respect for him and what he's doing because as I was watching it, like after the credit, the logo builds and all that stuff, it gets into it and it's cut at such a frantic pace that I thought I was watching a trailer for, like when you watch a YouTube trailer and it's got the pre-YouTube trailer before it so you don't leave the ad.
Yep.
That's what this felt like to an extent. And then when I was like, okay, so when is he going to slow down and let Elvis breathe a little bit? That's when the movie like stalled. For me, that it dragged, it like lurches from point of his life to point of his life. They spend so long on individual sections, like in the studio backlot or when they're putting on the quote unquote Christmas special. And it's like, man, just move on. Let's go. We got this. Tom Hanks, I think he did a really great job as...
Tom Hanks is doing Tom Hanks.
Tom, in it with a Dutch-ish accent. Mostly. That he can mostly, and the whole prosthesis and all that stuff and just be a nasty man who's manipulating him. I looked up afterward to see like how realistic it was because I'd also watched the Broi Deschanel video essay about it because she lambasts these kind of sanitized estate-approved biopics where they don't get to die. And that I remember, I haven't seen Bohemian Rhapsody, but I remember leading up Sacha Baron Cohen, or you know him as Borat, the comedian. He was going to do a biopic on Queen, but really dive into the nitty-gritty, nasty drugs, the sex, all the culture stuff. That especially around Freddie, but the estate was like, nope. We're going to have the sanitized one, and Bryan Singer's going to direct most of it until the bad stuff happened to him, or he did bad stuff, I should say. And that's the most popular one of all time. But they're kind of just cutting to the notes of the Wikipedia article, and I give Baz a lot of credit for his showmanship. He is constant. All of his letters are beveled and gold and floating around, and his title cards are in the environment. And he's got
they got the bling. They nailed it.
It is so blingy, and he does it for so cheap too. That was like a $75 million film.
Wow.
Yeah,
that is pretty stunning.
And granted, it looks very CGI.
Sure.
But I mean, that's just and every
it's
time
it's also kind of his aesthetic too.
It totally is. Yeah, all the way back. But I enjoyed it to the end, to how historic it is. I enjoyed it, especially just how it makes so much more sense now how he was manipulated into dying essentially by his manager, who was writing him for every dollar he was worth. And it's like, oh my God. And Elvis, and part of the things that Elvis did that they didn't touch on, like the whole Camilla thing, and that was a little dicey. How did you like it?
I'm really hot and cold on Elvis.
I get that.
A lot of it I really liked. A lot of it I really didn't like. I am a Baz Luhrmann fan. I really love Romeo plus Juliet. I used to call Moulin Rouge my favorite movie. It never really was, but it just really sat with me at the time. And you're right. I respect him committing to the bit. Baz Luhrmann has his way of doing things, and he has done it for years.
Yeah.
So you know what you're getting into.
Yeah.
Knowing this estate issue really, I think, explains a lot of this movie, because I came out of this movie wanting more about Elvis's personal struggles with his drug use, with his weight, with his image, with everything.
Because it was just boiled down to he's taking pills.
Yeah, it was boiled down to about last, 30, 45 minutes of the movie.
Yeah, right, exactly.
And in reality, we all know that that's not usually how things happen.
No, you don't just start taking pills.
I appreciate the the approaches that the film made to show that he was, in a lot of senses, stealing black music. I think they could have gone a lot further with that while also staying respectful to the estate.
Yeah.
I honestly wanted more of that and felt like it could have and should have taken a lot more of the movie. Some people claim that they already went plenty far. I personally wanted to see more of that.
Yeah.
As far as the editing, yeah. Holy cow. That is Baz Luhrmann, up, down, forwards, backwards.
Yeah.
And it's funny that you bring up Bohemian Rhapsody. I love using that as an example because it actually won its Oscar year for Best Editing, which it is notorious among the editing community as being one of the worst edited Oscar movies maybe of all time.
Yeah.
And that happened because of a lot of political reasons as far as the band goes.
One, and the Academy Awards, you can do a whole thing about that.
You could do a whole thing about that. My understanding is if you had lived through Elvis's time, you probably enjoyed this movie a lot more than everyone else because of how well they match cut the film to the stage performances.
Right.
And the last performance he gives is the Unchained Melody, and it is beautiful, and it legitimately brought me to tears, even though I didn't think it was that great of a movie. And I gotta respect it for that.
Yeah, and they didn't put Austin in a really big suit or anything, because you see him in the historic footage, and he is big.
Yes.
And so when they have that newsreel cutaway, it's like he's only considering his like growing waistline, and he looks the same. And it's like, that doesn't help me, Boz.
Yeah.
So.
And that said, Austin Butler, I think, is also nominated. I think he did a fantastic job. I don't feel like it was parody.
Yeah.
I felt like he really did try to connect. And from what we're hearing, he apparently hasn't dropped this accent. So if he wins this role, I cannot wait to hear him still be an Elvis.
He doesn't drop it until the director's commentary. Everything Everywhere All at Once. I have not seen this.
This is a fun movie. So I actually saw this one in theaters when it first came out almost a year ago. One of my favorite creators, they did a fantastic job. This movie is fun and wacky and interesting and compelling. And it's not going to be for everyone.
Yeah.
It's a very real story of a real family. And watching, excuse me if I pronounce her name wrong, Michelle Yeoh, her performance is outstanding. The way it references her previous work is brilliant. It is fun. It is quirky. It is touching. I want to put it up there with Banshees. But I don't feel like it's an Oscar movie. Yeah. Now, if it wins, honestly, that'll be following the trends because it is winning a lot right now.
Yeah.
If it wins, honestly, it'll be a pretty big move for the Academy. They will have never have voted for anything this diverse and complex, I think, before. When we think diverse, we're thinking of like Moonlight, for example. I think that was
Parasite,
or possibly Parasite. I'd say maybe it's a little less than Everything Everywhere All at Once. I want to see that win in the way that it actually deserves to win, not as, the Academy is growing, and when we're trying to prove it.
Yeah, more merit. We talked about The Fabelmans a good while ago, and I don't want to like totally retread that ground. I did get to see it. It is schmaltz. It is schmaltz, schmaltzy, schmaltz. And in fact, like the opening scene where they're outside the movie theater and his dad, his brilliant computer technician, science dad, who's explaining to little not Steven Spielberg because it's a faux,
it's a fable.
Quasi man. It's a fable, man. But he's like explaining it. It brings the magic of all this stuff together. You just have to believe it. Like not quite, but almost.
Pretty close.
That almost repulsed me from the get. Yeah, like that is because that is trademark Spielberg. But as it moves on, as it gets into it, as he's building his stories, as he's filming his movies that are clearly far too deluxe and realistic to have ever been shot in the real world with Boy Scouts and guns and stuff like that. With his,
it did become fun to imagine this being a real thing.
Right, exactly. And him it really touched on, oh God, like especially to me personally, the parental approval of don't get into filmmaking because that's not a real job, and he keeps pushing it, and it's not until like the very end that he just kind of his dad. Paul Dano, incredible. And his mother, an incredible Michelle Williams. And even, I didn't even recognize him for a bit, but Seth Rogen. Seth Rogen is in there. Incredible work. It's not until the end that he finally kind of acknowledges, like, okay, well, you can do a thing with this. And then I mentioned it the last time, but the cameo.
There's an excellent cameo.
There's an excellent cameo by David Lynch. And it is so great. It's up there with John Hurt in the last couple minutes of A History of Violence for cameos.
Gotcha. I haven't seen it.
Oh my god.
I'm really good at watching Best Pictures, but that's about it.
Well, that was from an era when they only had the 5.
Right.
And I don't think I got anything.
Yeah, the Fabelmans is clearly how anybody reflects on their own memories.
Right.
When you remember big moments in your life, they are not simple. They are big and dramatic and, crazy and, cringy at times.
Yeah.
That's how you remember, and that's how this movie was made. And I really appreciated that.
Yeah.
And I can completely understand where you're coming from with that very beginning, because that they start you off, right away. This is the tone of the movie.
Right, exactly.
And it sticks to it. And
yeah.
I appreciate that.
And you can take it or leave it. I took it eventually, and I really enjoyed it as a movie. I really did. Yeah. But it was.
And I would say it's a movie for movie people. It's, you mentioned having a film background.
Yeah.
Same thing. I remember, applying for college and saying, I don't know what I want to do, but it's got to have something to do with movies.
Right.
Anybody that's been in a creative field can empathize.
Absolutely. We've got 4 more to go.
4 more to go.
We can do this. Tar, speaking of the opposite of warm and cuddly and schmaltzy, Tar is a brutal film with tons. I saw this one. Tons of very geometrically precise camera work and a protagonist that is not very likable.
Not at all.
Not at all. And what a strange movie. And it was an experience that I loved.
Yes.
As a result.
Cate Blanchett is fantastic. She gives it her all. You could expect nothing less from her. I want more people to see this so that I can... It's easy to kind of lose yourself in the scenes here.
Yeah.
Because it's so engaging and does... It's also a very misleading movie. Just because it's about symphony, about orchestra, doesn't mean that you need to know everything there is about music.
Right.
It is very approachable.
It is very approachable.
It's kind of the point, too.
And also very not, because it's still got those sitting there just long shots of people talking, New Yorker interview. And I was like mid-movie, it's like, did this actually happen? Is there an actual Lydia Tarr out there or something? And I'll leave the mystery to you. It convinces you. Yeah, it really does. Like, oh my God. Triangle of Sadness.
Triangle of Sadness. We're gonna skip right over Top Gun.
No, that's next.
Okay.
Because I saw Top Gun.
Okay.
Yeah.
Triangle of Sadness. I will be fast about this one because this is not one that's easily talked about. If you're familiar with this director, you absolutely know what you're getting into. This movie jumps genres like nobody's business.
Oh.
This is not your typical Oscar film. You think Everything Everywhere All at Once is a little bonkers. You have not yet seen Triangle of Sadness.
It seems kind of downy, like weird, like... I don't know.
Triangle of Sadness is a really misleading title as well. It makes you feel like it's going to be a really dark film. It addresses very serious topics with every emotion that you can think of. Woody Harrelson is in it.
Okay.
That is all I'm going to say.
All right.
It's a great movie. I want a lot of people to watch it. You may not like it. Don't take my recommendation.
It seems like a movie. Who's that indie brother duo who they did James Who Lives at Home? Like some other ones where they're sitting there just zooming in and out, snap zooms and stuff like that. I can't remember their names, but that seems like that kind of movie, but apparently not.
It's wild.
Okay.
And you will not You will not understand it until about the second act, what I'm talking about.
Okay.
The second act comes and boy.
I do want to see this. I really do. So
recommend if you've got some grit to you.
Okay.
You got to be a little tough.
You guys, Tar's the same way.
Yes.
But you don't need any grit because it gives you grit. Top Gun Maverick is not going to win Best Picture. Or okay, you're looking at me in the camera. I'm looking up there. If Top Gun Maverick wins Best Picture at the Oscars,
yes.
I will eat a hat.
You will eat a hat.
And I will eat a hat. I will eat just about anything. So
we're going to hold you to that.
Yeah, that's fine. We'll buy a hat and I will eat it. Fun movie. I have no idea, aside from just how popular it was, why. I mean, it's visually, it's up there. Joseph Kosinski is amazing director. Always, ever since Tron Legacy, even Oblivion, which was not a great movie, but looked amazing. I don't know why this is in this list.
I gotta give it credit for the technical achievements.
Yeah.
You taught all these actors how to actually fly those planes.
Or they're like passengers or something.
No, they flew those planes.
Oh.
They are in the driver's seat. They built IMAX cameras to fit in there. If they messed up their take, they had to do it again. And you know how expensive that's going to be.
Oh, and they had to set up like 6 cameras too
in
there.
It was insane. I give it credit for that stuff. As far as plot...
It's a comic book.
Yeah, it's less than a comic book.
Yes.
There's the bad guys. We got to get the bad guys taken care of.
It's like you get a
on.
Gums, like in your Cracker Jack comic or something. Yeah.
It's in there because I feel like, Tom Cruise is a 60-year-old man.
He's getting up there.
He's getting up there. His chances are dwindling with every movie he's making. That said, this movie does not deserve Best Picture.
No.
It deserves a lot of other things that are not Best Picture.
Yeah.
And it has probably more to do with the crew than anything
bet
else.
it goes for a couple of the technicals.
I'll really cross my fingers on that because that...
Which I'm not seeing
it may not be on our list here.
Writing adapted screenplay and not much else.
It may be in the technical awards. I'm not sure what they're doing for that, but it was...
It was
a fun movie to watch.
Go watch it. Go watch
it's a
Top
fun
Gun
movie.
Maverick. Film editing. I'll believe film editing. But that's got to go against Banshees and Elvis
and everything everywhere
and Tar.
and
all right, maybe it does.
Yeah, I don't know.
Never mind. Last one, Women Talking.
Women Talking, based off of a book, adapted screenplay, probably does a fantastic job of adapting the screenplay, is my guess. Ugly looking movie. Ugly in that they put such a strong filter on every shot that it is distracting. When I first saw the trailer, I thought it was just a bad upload of the trailer. And to the point where I'm kind of embarrassed for them. I don't know why you would make this very specific decision and commit so hard to it, because it pulled me out of the entire movie. Now, maybe this is a movie person problem. I'm a movie person.
Yeah.
Maybe that's my problem. The acting is fantastic. The script, nah, but maybe it's adapted great. Every single actor in this movie blows it out of the water. I was in tears, quite literally sobbing in the theater. Fantastic performances. In hindsight, maybe not the best movie. Not that it's not an inspiring story with wonderful things to quote. It is. It's just maybe not the best movie. Maybe a better stage play.
Okay, yeah.
Maybe a better stage play.
Yeah, that makes sense. Because there are definitely... there's been at least 1 or 2 movies in the past however long where it's like you're in it when you're in it, and then when you're out, you're like, oh. The Batman for me was like that.
Well, it's not necessarily forgettable, but it takes place in about 3 different settings. It's just so clearly set up because it's literally about women talking. It is about a group of women trying to decide whether or not they want to escape the toxic situation that they're in. And I don't really want to go into it because that'll make us way over time. And spoilers. But that's what it is it's a bunch of people talking to each other. It's very powerful. But again, maybe a better stage play.
Okay. All right. So I said in the briefing here, who do we pick to win? Guess you'll have to find out by listening to the show. Well, you've already made it this far, and I've basically already tipped our hands. I think it's Banshees. I think
I'll be bringing my list for next time so we can see how we
did. Do you have your entire list?
I don't have my entire list, but if it were my choice for Best Picture, I would pick Banshees. I truly think that Best Picture will go to
All Quiet.
All Quiet.
I believe somewhere between the two of those, that makes the most sense. And then Everything Everywhere is like the dark horse.
Yeah.
And then the rest.
It's not impossible for that one to win.
It is impossible for Top Gun to win, though.
Just so you can not eat a hat.
I'm really banking on it. Well, thank you so much. Did I have anything more for this? Did you have anything more?
No.
Okay.
I've talked a lot. I had to make up for Kelly not being here.
I know, exactly. Yeah. Well, we miss Kelly. Miss you, buddy. You're not listening to this, are you? Anyway. Well, for everyone else who's listening and watching at home, wherever you're at, be sure to like and subscribe and all that fun social media stuff. If you have a comment or question you'd like us to answer or address on the air, send an email to podcast@6035media.org. That's 60 spelled out, 6035, and put hot take somewhere in the subject line. Tell us what your Oscar picks are. And how amazing Tar is, or why we're wrong about Top Gun, or whatever. Let us know. 6035 podcasts are listener supported. If you like what we're doing, become a member. Visit 6035membership.org. And again, remember that's 60 spelled out. Be sure to check out our weekly news show, 6035, with executive editor Brian Grossman. In fact, I have a clip that we can toss to right now. Take it away, Brian.
Thanks, Nick. This week on the 6035, Dave Gardner, executive producer of podcasts, and managing editor Helen Lewis, join me in the studio to discuss our new 6035 Vote podcast and some of the issues facing mayoral and city council candidates in the April 4 city election. Check out our podcast on YouTube or anywhere you listen to podcasts. Back to you, Nick.
Well, thank you for that clip so much. That was really great. Well, I had a quip in here, but I want you to join us next episode where we weigh the entire collection of Beatles albums. We'll have some hot takes for you then, too.